Okay, so as we said before the break, that strategic cost analysis looks at unit costs, and again, it is going to be linked to your financial statements. So if you were doing a question in the exam on ratio analysis, you would appreciate that looking at the cost structure in the financial statements could help you in a question that focuses on cost analysis or a value chain question. Now, the other thing, folks, about how the exam is structured or normally structured, we normally have questions, we normally have questions that are interrelated, meaning that if I give you a question on the EFE, that EFE question is going to be linked to the ratio question that would have a table. And if I give you what we call, you'll get later down a space matrix or a grand strategy matrix, they are all going to be for the same company. And we can give you a question on value chain analysis which speaks to the same company. So to answer the question properly, you would have to take data from the financial ratio question, data from the EFE or CPM to answer the value chain question. Because the paper is like one kind of running case. So the questions are not individual questions. And that's the point I mentioned that sorry? I told students I've been doing it for years, 2 hours, and doing well. And doing it very well. Right? So that's the way the exam is structured into related. Yeah? So talk to anybody who did it before. That's the way it is. Right? It's like a case. It's like one running case. So I'm saying that to you folks to appreciate. You can't spot then. You can't spot and say, I will answer question 3 and I'm going to prepare for this topic. You can't prepare for topics because nearly everything is going to be interrelated and interconnected in the exam. This is it we're doing here all the time. This is it. That's what I said to you. So when we discuss how to answer the IFE, that's how you answer it in the exam. How we looked at the EFE, that's how you answer it in the exam. You understand? That's just how we answer the questions in the exam. So every week is a mock exam. So how we are going to analyze the value chain analysis is actually how I will require you to answer it in the exam. So every week we practice answering exam questions. So your statement is a very important comment. So again, folks, one of the things you will note about value chain analysis is its relationship to the marketing concepts and competitive strategies we're going to deal with following for the next 2 to 3 weeks, right? So for example, when we talk about strategies of backward integration, it is at the stage of inbound logistics. When we talk about strategies of forward integration, it is at the phase of outbound logistics, right? You see, so we integrate these marketing concepts into the value chain. So inbound logistics is where you get your source of supply. So in order to analyze the value chain, you need to understand concept of backward integration and how backward integration works. And when you try to look at outbound logistics, you need to understand how forward integration operates and the concepts of forward integration. So this is a typical company value chain, and you see it has supplies are purchased, we call it inbound logistics. We have operations or processing. Then we have distribution and outbound logistics, sales and marketing and service. And as a result of that, it is intended to produce some profit since I'm managing my costs. So folks, the link then would be your business model, and everybody knows the business model is made up of sources of revenue, how you manage your costs in order to make a profit. So folks, what I'm saying to you then, the cost component of the business model is what we are talking about when we speak about value chain. Everybody with me? Everybody with me? Right? So in other words, you cannot do analysis of value chain unless you understand the concept of a business model. That you have a strategy for developing revenues as we discussed. You need to have strategies for managing costs. So the cost component of the business model is what happens in value chain, where you buy your materials, where you process your stuff, where you get your things to market, your sales and service, your primary value chain, your secondary value chain, sorry. You understand what I'm saying? Right. Anybody wants me to go over that? Everybody clear? The young lady right in the back. You're clear? Next to you there, you're clear? The guy that came in later told me I'd pick on him. You clear? You all clear? Go over it. All right, what we are saying, folks, folks, that's the good thing, I tell people, I love when students tell me go over and go over. If you tell me go over it 3 times, I'll go over it 3 times. If you tell me go over 4 times, I have a problem. I feel good when you tell me go over something. So remember, you have value chain, which is inbound logistics, your source of supply, right? Outbound logistics, where you get things to market, and operations and processing, where you convert your resources you bought into a product to be sold to customers. Everybody with me? So what we're saying then, that the business model is how a company is able to make money and how it's able to make a profit. Everybody with me? And we said profit is not a function of selling goods and services. Let me repeat. Profit is not a function of selling the most goods and services. So based on your accounting knowledge, profit is a function of managing your costs. You understand? You can make billions in revenues, but if your costs are not managed, you will not even break even. And this is, I say, where your accounting knowledge comes in to understand what I'm saying. So what we're saying, the business model says, this is where you need to develop a strategy to generate revenue, whether the traditional business model or the modern business model. But it says, but you also need to have a strategy to manage your costs. And the point I was making, the strategy, or one of the critical strategies to manage costs of the business model, is value chain analysis. Because as we said before, value chain analysis is the company's strategy or cost management strategy. That's all we are saying. And it is such a broad thing that the cost management strategy that would allow the business model to be fulfilled involves looking at your sources of supply. So let me write the supply. So it involves looking at your sources of supply or your suppliers. Right? It involves looking at your production processes here. And it involves looking at how you're able to distribute your product. And there are all kinds of costs involved there. And then in terms of your back of office, what kind of costs you normally would find here? In the back of office. And what kind of costs you call those? That's it. So this is where you find your fixed costs. This is where you find your variable costs. And this, I said, so this is accounting in real life. So this is where you find your fixed costs, your full-time staff, and this is where you find your variable costs in production, where if production drops, what happens to the staff? You get laid off on short leave. So the bottom one is the office staff. This is office staff. So the university, whether they deliver good service or bad service, they get paid every month. You understand? And we know here we got some staff that they deliver horrible service. And we got, I don't know if it's minority, but some that try to deliver excellent service. But they can get paid all the same at the end of the month, so that's a fixed cost. But when it comes to production, depending on production falling, so this happens in factories and manufacturing environments. Production down, and they tell you staff, sorry, we got to put you on, and these are the people who earn the lowest wages, we got to put you on a short week. But all of that is a strategy to do what? Manage costs according to the business model. So my friend at the back, you with me? All clear now? All right, good buddy. Folks, I learned years ago in my education process, the smartest students ask the most foolish questions. Because if you don't understand, ask a question. It might seem foolish to the others, but at least you get clarified for you. And you will never forget that particular concept, you see. So I urge you folks, ask as much questions as possible. I have no problem in going over. I ain't here just to give you notes. I'm here to try to get you to understand these concepts well, you see. That's my concern about understanding. So let's give some examples of an industry value chain so you understand how wide the value chain could be. So you could have an industry value chain which goes right backward. We talk about backward integration. So this concept here is related to backward integration. That you have a timber farm, right? And this is a paper and pulp industry. So the farm is the forest where people are growing trees. And you could have somebody, when I went to Kenya, people actually have farms of growing trees. In Kenya, they don't go to lumber yards like we have really that import wood. In Kenya, people have their farms with their trees, and they have a milling machine, and they cut their own wood and build their own houses out of their wood. Right? A lot of informal, some really significant work, and they make furniture out of this wood. It's amazing, man. Really, really amazing. So it's not unusual to pass a highway in Kenya, and you see these small villages with markets. You know how we sell food along the road? And in this market, people sell chairs, tables, coffins. There are people that sell homemade coffins. You don't go to stores and the big and funeral homes to buy coffins and things there. People make them out of their wood that they've cut. And they sell coffins next to the road, tables that are made, chairs. I mean, it's amazing in the economy, really an amazing economy. Of course, it looks strange to see coffins next to the road being sold, but it's a common practice for very small business and small entrepreneurs. So you have a farm of a forest. Somebody cuts the wood, and you could have somebody who just grows trees. And he or she determines, I don't want to get into cutting wood. So somebody comes to them and say, I want to buy your wood. So they cut the trees, and then you have the logging. So somebody buys the trees and would cut them into logs. But the person that is into logging might determine, I don't want to get into to converting into pulp. So somebody else sets up a pulp mill, and they buy the logs, and they convert the wood into pulp, the trees into wood, or the logs into wood, into pulp. And then the person making the pulp could determine, trying to make paper is a very sophisticated, complex, and high-cost environment. I don't want to get involved in that. So somebody sets up the paper making business, and they buy then the pulp from the pulp mills, and they make paper. And then the printing companies buy paper, printing purposes, or publishing, etc. But it is possible, like the companies, the Neil and Massey and the Anson McCalls and these Grace Kennedy from all over the Caribbean and the Masseys, it is possible one conglomerate, as we discussed in our tutorials earlier in the week, could determine we want to control the market for paper and pulp. So what they do, they go to Brazil and they enter into a long-term lease for 50 years. They lease a part of the forest. So what have they done? We call it in marketing, they have backward integrated. Everybody with me? So you have no lease the forest. So the trees belong to you, and you determine these loggers, what would cause a company to want to buy out the logging company? Somebody in the back, the guy in the blue, in the green shirt. What would cause a company to try to buy out the logging company? I am into paper making. I am the last one. I am into printing and publishing. Why might I want to buy out the logging company? Sorry? Right, so what? If I tell you then what kind of analysis could allow you to come to that conclusion, what analysis would have been done? Let me see if you're thinking. What analysis would have been done to make for you to be comfortable that this cost is being unbearable and I am being challenged? What kind of analysis would be done to get to that? What do you have to look for? What are we looking for that we discussed early in the semester and even this morning? Sorry? It's part of the scanning, but what will we do then when we're looking at the environment? What we are trying to determine? Why might I want to buy out this logging company? It's about cost. But why then? What tool would help me to determine? What tool will help me to do an analysis to determine 5 forces? And you're looking to do what? The bargaining power of the supplier is high. So because that's excellent, because the bargaining power of the logging company is high, that is pushing costs right through the value chain. But if the logger has this big monopoly and pushing up costs, it's going to go into the pulp and go into the paper making and come to me. So I made a decision, that's bargaining power. So I have a hostile takeover and I buy the logging company. And what I've done immediately, I can now control the source of supply of the log. And then I determine, you know something, the pulp mill also got too much bargaining power. Another hostile takeover. I buy the pulp mill. And I determine, you know something, I think I want the paper too. A hostile takeover, so I control the whole industry. Because I control the industry, my friend like to call them oligopolies, these powerful companies, but it exists in the world, folks, all in the Caribbean. Most of the big companies in the Caribbean are in everything. They're in supermarkets, cars, the clothes, for consumer durables, electronics. They control the market and are major suppliers because what do they do as major suppliers? They're able to do what that small companies can't do. What do big companies do? What can they afford to do that small companies can't do when it comes to their supplies and things they're going to sell? Sorry? But how are they able to set the price? It's something they do right backstream. They buy in bulk because they have the asset base and the cash base. And when you buy in big bulk quantities, what do you get reduced? Your unit costs cheaper. There's your accounting, folks. There's your cost and management accounting. So the bigger bulks you can buy, and when people can buy 50 and 60 containers, it's going to cost you millions, but your unit costs are much reduced over time. And then what they do, they sell to the small businesses at the price that they determine. And again, they have the power as the major suppliers then, you see. Everybody with me? Home appliance, same thing. You have the parts and components manufacturer. So tell me a computer company that has it broken up like this. Which computer company has it broken up like this? Parts, component, assembly, wholesale, distribution. Dell. Dell doesn't have any place. You say Dell doesn't make anything. Dell has people all over the world, companies, that when you order, Dell makes the order. So when you order, the company that assembles will get the part from somebody who assembles, and then somebody else distributes, but Dell doesn't have a place that they manufacture all of these things in one spot. Right? So why do they have this, a company like Dell would have this fragmented approach to selling its products? What are they trying to do? They're trying to control costs. And what costs they're trying to control? Labor costs. What other costs they're trying to control? What kind of operational costs? Rent. And the biggest one where you are storing up thousands and thousands and tens of thousands. Warehouse costs, security costs, and with the major issue when you start to store tens of thousands of things, people borrow them permanently. Serious, folks. Once you have big warehouses with tens of thousands of things stored over time, people borrow them permanently. meaning they steal. And then obsolescence, certain things, you do an inventory check at the end of the year to find out how many things are short, etc. Right? So again, you have the manufacture of the components, assembly, distribution, all different parts. But it is possible for a company to have all. Apple and Samsung. Apple does not manufacture anything in the US really. What Apple does, all of those things mainly in China. Some other place puts them together and then they're distributed all over the world. Not by Apple, they are iStores. But again, Apple have all kind of persons under license who will distribute for them. You see? And again, it's trying to control costs. Everybody with me understanding this concept of a business model. So that's Apple's business model. That's Dell's business model. How we will manufacture. In the old days, back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, folks, you had these massive, massive warehouses and production chains where the company controlled everything, but they realized costs. It was difficult to manage costs. So why do they do production in other countries like China, Malaysia, and the Caribbean? Why? Labor costs in China per worker might be a tenth of what they will have to pay an American worker. So when you hear Trump in the election say we want to bring back American jobs, it's companies who have said, listen, it's better for us to put our production processes in Asia, be able to produce cheaper goods, which provides more value for money for the customers. And because they're controlling costs, they're then able to do what? Increase their profitability. And soft drink industry, basic ingredients. Right? Then you have the syrup manufacturer, somebody who bottles, somebody who distributes and retail, but they are big companies that will do all of these things. So they will have a very big and expansive value chain. So these are things you can read up on your own. And this is the discussion we had just now about benchmarking. Right? Best practices are achieved from doing all kinds of benchmarking to look at who is doing something good or efficiently. So this is just an example of what I said, correcting supplier-related cost disadvantages. And remember we said the biggest challenge for companies, the source of supply, when the supplier has high or low bargaining power. What's the issue? High or low bargaining power? High bargaining power. So you're saying negotiate more favorable prices with the supplier. But what would influence your ability to negotiate favorable prices with the supplier? Sorry? My guy here in the maroon shirt. What would influence a company's decision to negotiate favorable prices with a supplier? Right, but what would influence their ability to negotiate successfully? Right, the choice is bargaining power. If you are negotiating and you can negotiate with the supplier and indicate, I have a choice, which means that their bargaining power is not too high, you can negotiate. But when your bargaining power is low and you go to the supplier, the person with the highest bargaining power usually wins. And all the supplier will say is that you take it or leave it. And when they know there's not a lot of choices out there, at the price they're offering, you don't have a choice. So your bargaining power is low. Right? Work with suppliers to help them achieve lower costs. So what would a company do in that situation to help the supplier achieve lower costs? It's a paradox. So big companies do it. What can a company? I am a seller of cars, and I get my cars manufactured in Malaysia. So what might I want to do to be able to achieve lower costs for the final car that comes to me? What can I do? When you say work with your supplier. Sorry? Well, we want to do something before they sell to me. We're trying to get them to achieve lower cost of production. That's what you're saying. I'm trying to get my supplier to achieve lower cost of production. What do I do? My friend right here in the gray lot. Yes. The lady right here. Yes. What do I do to be able to work with my supplier to get it lower cost? Cheaper material, but that might impact on quality. Inject cash? Yes, they can do that. Invest so that they might upgrade their production processes. But training, what companies do, they actually invest in training the staff of the supplier. Because if I can help you to train your staff to be more efficient, it benefits my company. You understand? It seems paradoxical, but I invest in my supplier staff development to make them more efficient, more competent, that they can be the output done more efficiently, hence they can sell me a cheaper product. And big companies do that. In fact, a lot of American and European companies, when they're trading with Africa and Asia, they actually invest heavily in helping the companies to maintain quality standards. Or they can buy shares of. Let me become a partner with you. Let's merge. And what you call that? When you buy out your competitor, it is called, sorry? It is called, it's a form of acquisition, but what kind of integration strategy is it? No. It's called horizontal, correct. It's horizontal integration, where you purchase one of your key competitors. Horizontal integration. Correct. Right. They call it horizontal integration. So it can easily come and blend into my business. Yes. Sorry? We call it horizontal. But I point up, but it's not technically pointing up. So in fact, that's a good point you mentioned, because Fred David actually calls the three integration strategies vertical integration. Vertical integration strategies, backward, forward, and horizontal. Use lower price substitute inputs. What's the challenge of using cheap lower price substitute inputs? What's the challenge? Quality. Quality. Because your customers might be concerned, yes, you give me a better price, but it's not lasting, you see. Integrate backwards. And we said integrate backwards, we're going to buy out the source of supply, which powerful companies can do quite easily. Right? And there's some other examples of cost advantage, disadvantage, and the areas of cost. So this is a key, when you see these kind of key concepts, they're very important to learn. It's a lesson for value chain analysis that sustainable competitive advantage can be created by managing value chain activities better than your rivals and developing distinctive value chain capabilities to serve competitors. I remember we said distinctive competencies reside in the employees. And when employees have distinctive competencies, the kind of knowledge they have would be the tacit knowledge. And then we said it's all aligned then to the RBV, the resource-based view, which says that resources that will give you an advantage, competitive advantage, must be rare, not easily imitated, and not easily substituted. And that's your value chain. What I'll do next week, we are going to look at the cost drivers, and you can read upon it too. There are a number of cost drivers, like learning curves, etc. So look at your cost drivers that could be a disadvantage to the company, and read up on your cost advantages and cost disadvantages. So what I want to do now, I want to be able to share, let me close this down, a focus of where your quiz next week. the areas of focus.